We're very excited to spend, the next hour or so with you guys. But just to kind of give you a quick kind of agenda around things before we kind of reintroduce ourselves. Akash and I are going to spend some time obviously talking big picture with you all around, strategy and things you can do and take back when you're having those conversations with executives, C-suite, those pesky CFOs of the world. We're going to try and, give you guys some ammunition that you can take back to really improve those conversations, really help you get your budgets approved in this tightening economy and the challenges that we typically run into here in the L&D market. With that, we're also going to spend a good amount of our time today kind of focusing on the Bridge product specifically and how we've helped organizations do that. We'll show you a little bit of our product and kind of how we've helped organizations close skill gaps and overall, just improve their workforce. But those two pieces kind of go hand in hand. So we've kind of brought it all together into one. But yeah, very excited to spend some time. And I guess just to kind of like reintroduce ourselves. So my name is Mitchell Malett. I have been with Bridge for, we're coming up on 5 years now, which feels like forever, personally. I've been with the company for about 5 years. I have basically spent my entire career here helping brands that are looking to improve their learning and development strategies. Most of the conversations I have are with, Fortune 500 or nonprofits, government, really just about any industry out there. But they're brands that are coming to us looking to find ways to improve their overall learning strategies, whether it's, due to a lack of engagement, challenges with employee retention. The challenges vary depending on, the companies and the industries that they work in. And so it's kind of fun that I get to come in and kind of help share best practices of, hey, here's what this company did and that found success, and kind of help, really build them a culture of growth and development in really each organization. So it's kind of a passion of mine. I really love it. Very passionate about growth and development. But Akash, I know, you've been in this industry a lot longer than I have. So I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself, kind of your background, and maybe even share a little bit about Patheer, because I know we're going to be talking a little bit about that kind of stuff today.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Hi, everyone. So I've been in the talent and learning space for, over a decade. Like Mitch and Liz were sharing earlier, I co-founded a AI tech startup that really focused around how to help companies with skills development, specifically showing employees the right career paths internally, and then marketing the right skills that they should be developing internally. So definitely have a lot of experience around talent mobility and learning strategies. And then just recently, over the last 2 years, I've been working at Bridge, really driving the, again, career and skills development product strategy. So today I'm super excited, along with Mitch, to kind of also show you in the product how you can not only formulate a learning strategy, but how can you bring it to life with the right technology?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that, Akash. Yeah, always good to have. I kind of joke that Akash is the brains, and also honestly, looking at the cam, also kind of the beauty. So I'm not really sure what I'm contributing here today. So we'll see. But let's jump into things. Again, we are kind of short on time, so want to definitely jump into things. And I'm also gonna, throughout this session, gonna kind of ask for some interaction. Definitely don't want this to be a session where people are like falling asleep or like, getting distracted with other stuff. So I'm gonna ask for some engagement here in chat. And I've loved seeing all these like great locations coming in. I think I saw someone from Georgia and Wisconsin. So please continue to tell us where you're all coming from. I believe Akash is coming from the Seattle area, and I'm coming from Salt Lake City, Utah. So we're all scattered all over the place. But what we kind of wanted to start at is this section here. So kind of focusing on, those awkward conversations that a lot of us have. And I'm curious, like, give me a hand raise, give me like a, yeah, that's me in chat or something or other. But how many of you have recently been in this type of situation where you've had to walk into, the CFO's office, the VP of HR, someone's office and said like, hey, I need more budget, more L&D budget to do X, Y, and Z. And I feel like traditionally when I hear those types of stories, they're met with these types of responses from those C-suites of, hey, why can't we just like send them a YouTube video and be good to go? Like, why doesn't that do the trick? Or hey, we just like don't have the budget to invest in something like this. And I'll be totally honest, a lot of times if we're not going into those conversations like fully equipped and like ready to handle those difficult questions, a lot of times I feel like we can just fall flat on our face, frankly. It's because I think we in L&D have a much harder battle of showing that ROI that I think other departments might have. If you look at, sales or marketing in the typical world, it's very easy for them to say like, hey, we're going to invest this much in a marketing campaign and here's the financial benefits we expect. I think with L&D, it's not that simple, right? We're putting in money, but the outcomes are not a dollar amount. It's typically the impact that that's having on our workforce and what that's then giving back to our organization. And so Akash and I are going to spend some time with you guys, kind of how we take a look at our organization and really build out that use case of, hey, like here are the challenges we're facing, and here's what we're going to present to that CEO. And that is typically kind of the best place to start when you're building out that strategy of, hey, how am I going to present this, or how am I going to tell that story to our C-suite of, hey, we need more money for our, L&D strategies, not just because we're trying to throw money at a problem, but because we think we can find like valuable solutions. And of course, like every organization is vastly different. I think the hard thing is you got to kind of take a step back and really dig through, your organization and what you're seeing with your people. But what I thought today I would do is share some of the most common things that I kind of have heard over the past 4 or 5 years or so of working with brands, and kind of share with you. And maybe it'll get some juices flowing and kind of get you thinking about, hey, maybe that is something we're seeing, or maybe it's not. But I thought I'd kind of point out some of the big ones that I've run into. One of the biggest is spotting skill gaps in an organization is darn near impossible. I actually have pulled some quotes specifically from conversations I have. I love that we like record all of our calls here at Bridge, because I literally went back and like found word for word, like verbatim people's quotes around this. And I love this quote that a gal shared with me. She was coming from a construction company, but she was saying, hey, our frontline managers have no easy way of discovering what their team members want or are proficient in and where those are going to go with their career. So they just simply don't know what people are wanting to learn and how that's going to impact their, long-term career trajectory, but also just the growth and sustainability of our organization. And that's a major challenge for us, is just how do we spot those skill gaps? The other thing that I wanted to share is just simply personalizing the learning experience for each employee. I think probably most of us here on this call can resonate that I think L&D specifically has gone through the unfortunate reduction of workforce over the past couple of years. As the industry has become, more risk adverse and organizations are trying to thin out. I think L&D is a common department that typically maybe have gone from, teams of 5 or 6 down to maybe 1 or 2. And so I think a lot of us are wearing more hats than we historically have. And so really putting that time and effort into personalizing the experience for all of our learners is just becoming that much more difficult. And I think that's big for us here at Bridge, is like, how do we enable you guys as administrators to really have that flexibility to have, to not spend your entire day in the LMS, rolling out or pushing out enrollments, but really having those personalized conversations and meeting with people and doing what you're passionate about. I doubt anyone on this call is passionate about living in Excel and on the back end of an LMS. They're passionate about helping people grow and develop. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here. Very lastly, the other big headache that I think a lot of people have, especially when conveying that ROI to CEOs, is showing the statistics behind training development. Again, same gal from that first quote, but the same gal from that construction company shared with me that she's like, hey, there is no easy way for me to track the compliance of our organization without it turning into like an entire day long project of multiple Excel sheets, having to Slack boss or managers and job site leaders. She's like, it is just simply not feasible for me to do all of this while also doing my main 9 to 5. She kind of made the joke, which I thought was hilarious, but also heartbreaking. But she made the joke of like, hey, if OSHA came to our door tomorrow and knocked and said, hey, we're going to audit you and check for compliance. Her joke was, hey, I'm just going to start packing my bags before they even walk through the door, because simply we just don't have the tools and resources to properly demonstrate that. So again, big picture, looking at all of this, it's important for us to really identify, hey, what are those things that are costing our organization money? What are those things that are really a risk to our organization and like the growth of our business? And then how do we start to build that story back to then present to our executives? And Akash, I know you've got some experience of working with executives and kind of building that story. So I'd love kind of pass it over to you to kind of talk about how we go about building a really effective story to convey to those higher up leaders.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. So, when you go, let's say you've already built the business case and you've had the mandate to, carry out an effective or develop an effective learning strategy. What we've seen, over and over again, the organizations that we've partnered with here at Bridge that have actually been successful on executing the strategy, the first thing that they did when they were designing a learning strategy was make sure that there was a very mutual and strong partnership between, the employees or the learners and the overall business. It wasn't one-sided. And what I mean by that is, for your employees or learners, an effective strategy really needs to consider, how do you help people today really discover what are the right skills they should be learning for their current role, and what are new skills and roles that can be unlocked as they continue to grow with your business. That's from the point of the learner and the employee. But for you as an organization, if you develop a strategy around that, the data and the um, empowerment that you get from those employees actually give you the ability to target, the right opportunities or the right learning and training programs to the right people at the right time. So keeping that at a very high level in mind when you're building the strategy is super important. And then if we go kind of to the next slide, Mitch,
Yeah.
tactically, uh, when you're building the learning strategy, here's what we have seen as like fundamental pillars. And a little bit of this we're going to show you in a moment in a technology. But, the first thing is, how do you expose those employees to what roles exist within your organization today? And what are the skills that are required to be successful in those roles, right? Some call that career pathing, some call it career discovery, but that should be a core pillar of your overall learning strategy. And then after you have that defined, what sort of mechanism or process do you have in place where people can start quickly assessing their skills, understand, just a benchmark of where they're at today and where they potentially want to go? And then the last three kind of pillars of a learning strategy is what I like to say, developmental opportunities. What are ways, once you've already figured out the skills that are required for your role or a role that you're interested in, and you've assessed, your gaps, what developmental opportunities can your organization provide from a learning perspective to help you get there? We've seen over and over again, some organizations allow for special projects where you can experientially develop the right sort of skills to be successful. You can pursue mentorship opportunities where you can develop skills, or how do you take a rich content library that the organization might have created themselves or purchased and actually market that to the right people based on where they want to go? These are, again, five of the most fundamental pillars in that we've seen, again, with organizations we partnered with, execute and see results on. And we'll show you a little bit more of that as we get into kind of the bridge product demo.
No, I love that. And Akash, you kind of described there like the whole purpose of why Bridge was even created. Because I mean, Bridge has been around for about 10 years or so. And back in the day, we kind of looked at the job market, or I should say just the LMS market as a whole, and kind of realized that, hey, very quickly, like there's a lot of LMSs out there that do that base LMS functionality, right? Of, hey, we're pushing out training in mass, take this, check the box, do some basic reporting against it, boom, you're out the door kind of a thing. And we realized there's kind of a disconnect between the typical LMS functionality and, yeah, like you're describing, Akash, like the skills development and the overall performance and like well-being of the workforce. And that is kind of like why Bridge was created as a whole, and like why we've invested so much in over the years of kind of the skills development aspect that we're kind of describing today, is kind of create that triple thread of like, hey, one platform that can kind of help connect the dots between all those different parts of the employee experience, excuse me, but really bring them all together into one coherent and like user-friendly experience. And so what we're going to do is actually kind of during the demo, or kind of during the product process today, we're going to kind of focus specifically on this middle section here, the skills development, and show you kind of how not only does like, the training that you're putting into the LMS really like engage with the employees, but then how does that later on then help those people grow, develop, and later on, impact the bigger, the organization. And we are going to go through and kind of show you a live demo of this. I mean, we threw some imagery in here, just kind of give you like a quick little sneak peek of kind of what it looks like and feels like. But Akash, I know you were kind of planning to give kind of like a quick little flow of like, how would someone go about doing, skills development? Like, where do they even start? Do you want to do that before we kind of jump into the product demo here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked a little bit about the business case, what's
Mhm.
important in terms of designing a learning strategy. And then, like Mitch said, in the demo, something to keep in mind as we're talking through the learning strategy is skills development can be pretty robust. And how do you simplify it with a couple themes in mind that we're going to go over? So we'll share, if you go to the next slide real quick, Mitch, one element to be focusing on as we're going through this demo is again, how do you highlight and identify the skill gaps for your business? Not only help your individual employees and learners understand what their skill gaps are for their current role or aspirational roles, but how can you, through technology, also leverage that experience to get a workforce view of organizational skill gaps? So that's one key area in the learning strategy that we'll be addressing. The second is, how do you benchmark and actually validate how well your learners are performing on a particular skill? How can you give them real-time feedback from their peers to also understand, if there's areas of improvement? It's one thing to say, hey, I have this skill, but how can others within your organization even give you feedback? So assessing of skills is a critical element just to keep in mind as we get into the demo. And then the third one is, once you've identified the gaps, once you've kind of got a benchmark assessment, how do you build a very robust plan that can actually help you get there? What are the different opportunities and learning that can be delivered to you as a learner by your organization that can make you successful in accomplishing some of your career goals? So those are the three fundamental, I think, pillars today that we want to make sure that we're highlighting as we go throughout the demo. And like Mitch said, we will have some time at the end for questions, but don't hesitate to ask in the chat as we get flowing through the demo.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So let's do this. Like without further ado, let's jump over and actually show you guys like what Bridge looks like and feels like. If you take anything out of today's call, one thing I always say is if you are looking at L&D tools, 100% of the time, test out the products, take them for a drive. It is absolutely baffling to me the amount of conversations I get on that people are like, hey, yeah, we went out, we bought this thing, totally not what we thought we were getting. So now we're back on the market. So absolutely, we're going to kind of take you through a live view of that, really show you what it looks and feels like so you kind of experience it. And what I'm actually going to do is actually kind of take you through my personal experience leveraging Bridge. So kind of like I was saying at the start, I've been with Bridge for about 4 or 5 years or so. But what's great is I've been able to actually leverage the tool, and I'm gonna kind of take you through that process of like what I did specifically to like help move through different job titles and roles, specifically. And I think one of the big questions we typically get when talking about, that skills development of employees is, hey, where do we even start with all of this? You get a new learning tool. A lot of times it can be overwhelming and employees just simply don't know, hey, where do I even know what to start with? Where do I know like what I want to do and where I want to go with my career? And so what I love about Bridge is we actually have a section that is kind of geared around that big 30,000-foot view of, hey, who does Mitch want to be? Where does he want to go with his career? And that is what we would call like kind of the career vision page inside of Bridge. And this is just that. It's like that cliche question we all hear in job interviews of where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is kind of that area for someone to go in and say, hey, I'm not sure where I want to go in 5 years, but hey, maybe I know where I want to go a year from now or 2 years from now and start to build out kind of that plan of where I want to go. And so as a learner, I can come in and actually the very first place that I started when I joined Bridge was coming in here to the future roles. And so I've got some example data in here today, but like what a learner might be able to do is come in and say, hey, maybe long term, 5, 10 years from now, I want to become that director of customer experience. But let's start breaking that down into smaller bite-sized chunks. It's that whole SMART goal mentality of let's get specific, like let's get very, measurable and like let's take those little baby steps. And so what we can do is actually break that up into like, hey, maybe a year from now, I want to move into a tier 1 role, tier 2, whatever. But again, kind of helps that employee start to build out who they are and where they want to go with their career. What I love from there is Bridge also has a section here around like desired skills. So, and you can see here, it's like completely blank. So, hey, I've identified of, hey, roles I want to move into, but I now don't know what roles or what skills I need to develop to even get to that point in my career. And so what I love about Bridge is if I actually jump back here, I'm going to navigate down to my individual profile, is Bridge is going to look at who I am as an employee, and it's actually going to start to recommend to me specific skills based on my current job title, but also like, again, where I want to go with my career. So I can come in and I have this whole section that's like, hey, what are skills that you currently have? I can come in and manually add in a couple, but hey, I don't really know what skills are relevant to my job today. So for this example today, I'm an operations director. So hey, I don't know what skills an operations director should have. So what I can do is I can actually click into this section and Bridge is going to recommend, hey, based on your job title and the industry data that we have, these are some specific skills that we think are going to be relevant and help you get not only competent in your current role, but help prepare you for those next steps in your career. So what I can do as a learner is I can say, hey, collaboration is a big one for me. I should learn that. Communication, Excel macros, those are all things I should learn or I should have. And so once I filled out my profile, that's going to, again, just kind of give me that summary of, hey, what are skills that I currently have? What are skills that I'm wanting to develop? So we've kind of figured out that high level, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? But now it's time for us to get like actionable and start to build out like specific plans of how we're going to close those skill gaps. And again, that can create a whole nother set of questions of, hey, how do I find relevant content? Where do I go to find mentors and people? And so now we're going to kind of show you a couple of areas where you can go and do that very easily. The first place that I want to start today is this area that we call the skills community inside of Bridge. And this is just specifically that area where I could go in and say, hey, I want to find, mentors. I want to find content. I want to find things specific to an individual skill that I want to work on and develop. Today I think we'll use this Excel macros. I like to use this a lot because Excel is something that I definitely consider myself a novice at. My wife is a project manager, has been for her whole career. She is an absolute wizard when it comes to Excel. And so I always have to ask her when I'm playing with Excel, like, hey, can you come help me with this, whatever. But so long story short, for today's example, we're going to be using Excel here. And so as I've selected that skill, like, hey, this is something I want to work on and develop. What Bridge is going to do is start to kind of show me, hey, here are the resources currently inside of the organization that are at my disposal. So first and foremost, we've got this section here, which is showing me the people that have this skill. So I can see whether they're, colleagues of mine, people on my team, or even people in other departments or organizations, or I shouldn't say organizations, but other departments and areas of the business. I can actually see them right here and I can say, oh, hey, I can, reach out to Logan or Josh here and kind of create a relationship or get introduced to them and start to pick their brain. What I also love is as we scroll down, there's also a whole area dedicated to people that are in a similar position to myself that want to work on Excel macros and want to develop this specific skill set. And so again, like we can create kind of a cohort, or I can, reach out to Dylan here, who's a colleague, and say, hey, what are you doing to work on Excel? Have you had any, success, any recommendations, stuff like that. But again, ways to kind of help create those relationships throughout the business. And then very lastly, down here towards the very bottom is people that have literally inside a Bridge said, hey, I'm going to raise my hand. I am willing to serve as a mentor. I'm willing to help those people. And what we can do here in Bridge is actually click on their profile, reach out to them, set up a one-on-one. But again, very quickly create kind of those relationships all right here in the skills community, specifically around this one individual skill. As we scroll down, there's also going to be a whole area dedicated to the content around that skill. I'm sure most of you either build content, purchase it off the shelf. You have libraries of very, large quantities of content. And so for us at Bridge, it's like, how do we leverage that content and get it in front of the right people who want to develop those specific skills? And so right here, Bridge is going to recommend, hey, these are specific courses that we've identified that are going to be relevant for you based on these skills, based on the things that you want to develop. So we can see those right here and very quickly enroll in those, take those courses and jump in from there. But again, like this is just showing me high level, like what are just a few courses, and I can individually enroll here. But what a lot of our customers or the people I work with end up doing is actually building out very specific developmental plans. It's not just like, hey, take this one course and then, you're a pro at Excel. It's typically a very involved process. And at Bridge, we totally understand that. So there are a couple of different ways you could go about building kind of those growth conversation or growth journeys, I should say, all inside of the platform. And one of the great areas to do that is right here called the development plan section. This area is dedicated specifically to Mitch, managed and created by me to go in and build out my own personal development plan of like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And how am I specifically going to work on each individual skill gap that I've identified? So you can see here, I've got a couple examples of like communications, one I've done historically, building relationships, but Excel macros is that one that we've identified. Hey, this is something we actively want to be working on. So I can come in here very quickly and say like, hey, I want to enroll in, oh, I actually pulled up all the courses right there. I can enroll in those courses directly from here. So we'll say like, hey, I'm going to add this to my development plan. I can also search amongst our entire learning library and find any resources, content, whether they're, e-learnings, whether it's instructor-led events. I can find all of those and incorporate them right here into my development plan. What I also like here in Bridge is we also have the ability to create goals around those specific skills. So if you have goals of like, hey, I want to be competent in this by a certain date or time or whatever it is, you can actually set actionable goals here in these development plans as well. You can also even set up tasks, which I personally have loved and used previously. Like one area that I actually worked on myself was AWS training. So Amazon Web Services. We personally at Bridge didn't have a lot of content about it. And so what my mentor and my boss did was said, hey, I'm actually going to send you outside of Bridge. We're going to send you to AWS's website to go take some training with them. And so this task was nice that we could just have a like kind of a shell of just saying like, hey, Mitch, go to this website, go do this, and then come back into the LMS once you're done. But gives you that ability, that flexibility to really create a customized, development plan that isn't just solely e-learning material, but it also involves, the interaction from the employee itself. One other thing I was going to point out as well too, when we're in this section is, in talking about kind of the pathways that can be out, managers, administrators, people like yourselves can also go in and behind the scenes build out learning curriculums as well. They're what we refer to as journeys here at Bridge. I know almost every organization these days uses different vernacular, but we call them journeys here. But this is very similarly an area where you can go in and build out a step-by-step guide of like, hey, Akash, for example, I'm building you out this Excel macros journey. Here are the steps I want you to go through specifically. Here we've got that course that we saw in that skills community that we've pulled in. But then also from there is I can say, hey, I want you to then take this quiz. I also then want you to take what we refer to as a skills feedback survey. And I'll actually jump over and show you here just in a quick second what that looks like. But that is basically a feedback or a survey that I'm sending to my peers saying, hey, how am I doing on this skill? And they can actually receive anonymous feedback there. And then you can also say, hey, once you've done all those different things, we're then going to have you meet with your mentor or meet with your manager or whatever it is. But again, gives you a lot of customization and flexibility to build out these, skill developing journeys to be customized for each individual employee and what they need. But I do want to show that skills feedback survey because that truthfully is, I think, one of the most powerful aspects when we're talking about kind of the analyzing of like, hey, how am I doing as I'm working on these skills and as I'm trying to grow? And I love the skills feedback because I can come in here and request feedback from all my colleagues. I can really actually request feedback from anyone in the business. So as a learner, I can come in and say, hey, here are the skills specifically I want to be rated on. I can come in and choose really any person from the business. I can come in and say, hey, I want, our marketing guy, a couple people from my team, operations, you name it. But I can basically choose who I want the survey to be sent out to. And then they will all receive that. They'll be able to go through and actually give me feedback specifically on, those skills that I've selected. And let me show you kind of what a completed version of that looks like. Once all of those comments and feedback is received from those peers, it's actually going to kind of be combined into a document that looks a little bit like this. And what this is showing me is basically all the different skills that I've requested feedback on. So we've got building relationships, collaboration. And what you can see here is kind of a little like a ratings bar, basically, of saying, hey, amongst your peers, here is like traditionally how they rated you. Like this is my peer average. What's great is a learner can also self-review as well too. So if I would have done that on this, I would have actually seen a separate icon that would have been, my little headshot here or whatever on the timeline as well. So I can actually see how I rate myself versus how my peers rate me. So I can actually see, hey, am I, too hard on myself or am I overly confident? I like that kind of is like a test of just trying to see how am I feeling compared to, the actual team average. Also in those skills feedback surveys, I'll very quickly point out, there is also areas where those people that are being surveyed can leave comments and feedback of, hey, here's how Mitch does this really well. There's also an area for like constructive criticism or kind of feedback of, hey, here's some recommendations. But long story short, a lot of information that can kind of help those employees, get prompted of, hey, what are areas to work on? What are things that I'm good at? So then I can proceed and kind of move through my journey from there.
Hey, Mitch, we have a good
Yeah.
question here while
Yeah.
you're on skill feedback. Is the learner or the employee always have to request feedback, or can their manager kind of request feedback on particular skills maybe that they've added to their development plan on behalf of them?
Yeah, wonderful question. So actually, lucky enough, both are options. So as the end learner, like as a personal, like as myself, I can go in and request that feedback, but also from a managerial level, I can go in and request that on behalf of my direct reports. So we were given that example earlier. Like if I want to go in and say, hey, Dylan needs some feedback, I can actually go in as a manager and request it on his behalf, and get that all kind of brought back to him. Yeah, absolutely. Great questions, though. Wonderful. Okay, so again, I know we are super short on time today, so we're kind of pounding through a lot. So that was just a very quick and like dirty look at kind of like the end learner's view of like what it looks like to, identify those skill gaps, very quickly create a plan to close those, and then assess like how are we performing against those. But again, that's all at like the individual learner's level. We're now going to kind of take a step back and look a little bit higher for more of like a managerial or like a people leader type view. So what I love about this in Bridge is, of course, that manager is going to have all those same functionalities because your managers are going to need to develop skills. They're going to need to grow and do the same things that those end employees are. So they're still going to be able to do all of that. But in addition, what they'll have here is this area for managers to actually come in and look at the skills that my team is working on. And so right here is what we're looking at is basically a culmination of all the different skills feedback surveys that have been accomplished by my team. And what I'll see here is basically all the different skills that they've been rated against. And I can see basically how my team is being rated against those specific skills. So you can see here, there's only 2 people that have been rated on presentation skill. But if I jump over here to like Excel macros, that example we were doing earlier, I can see, hey, across my team, I've got Clayton here, who's a very, strong contributor. He's like very good at Excel macros. But then I can see, hey, we've got some people that are struggling down here that maybe we can then create a mentorship opportunity for Clayton, or maybe we can get them in contact with someone else. But again, giving you that visibility as a manager of just simply where are people's strong suits, where are people falling behind, and then how can I best enable and support them from there. What I also love about the skills section is there is an area called skills coverage. This traditionally has helped with things like succession planning. That is very commonly a big, concern when it comes to that conversation around skills of, hey, if tomorrow we lose some of our employees, what kind of gaps or issues is that going to create for us as an organization or a team? And so that is really what this skills coverage section is there to kind of help with. Is so I, as a manager, can come in and look at basically all the different job titles that I'm responsible for. So for our example today, I've just filled out one of operations managers. But I can come down and actually see across all the different skills that our operations managers should have. I can see basically where people's strong suits are and where are people maybe less like struggling. But also, hey, if tomorrow Clayton here were to take off, we can very quickly see, hey, that's going to create a very large skill gap here around managing up. Like that's a skill that only he has on our team. So if he takes off, yeah, we're obviously going to have some issues there. So it kind of gives you some of that visibility of, hey, strong suits, where are people, proficient? And again, how can we kind of make our organization and our team just that much more resilient to, common things like turnover and employee churn. So great resources there for managers. One other thing I'll point out too, before we jump even further, like to the administrative view, is as a manager, I can have visibility into all of these things for my end employee. And what I mean by that is if I want to come down here to that employee, Dylan, I can actually see his personalized career vision of, hey, again, long story, big picture, where does Dylan want to go with his career? I can see specifically the job titles he's shooting for, what skills he's working on. I can even see his drivers. And this is an area of Bridge that I'm like extremely passionate about. The drivers are kind of an activity, which I think our colleague Chad actually shared here in the chat. So highly recommend you all click on that and do that activity. But basically, it is an activity to help employees or learners figure out kind of what motivates them and drives them in their career. Like really what's going to make them get their head off the pillow in the morning and show up to work. And so it's great that I, as a manager, can come in and see, hey, what really is going to help motivate Dylan? Like for him, obviously, it's things like work-life balance and mentorship. So I know as a manager, those are areas I really need to focus on with him to help him feel fulfilled and really be happy within our organization.
So, Mitch, you've shared a lot in terms of I would say the learner side of discovering the right type of skills to work on and how you can get the right type of learning and training. But to really make all of this operational, there was even a question I saw in the chat. There's a lot of administrative things that need to be done. One,
Mhm.
you know, you have to be able to, have a career framework with, jobs mapped to skills. You have to build your own skills taxonomy.
Yeah.
All these things, you have to tag your learning content maybe to the right type of, courses and skills. Can you share a little bit more on the administrative side, how Bridge can support this, and make kind of the administrative side a lot easier too?
Yeah, absolutely, Kosh. Like I appreciate that being asked because that is definitely like one of the most, I'll say, intimidating parts of looking at like training technologies because yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into kind of the setup and the behind the scenes. Funny enough, I've actually met with a couple people. Like one example was last year at the ATD event was I met with a gal in the booth and we sat and chit chatted for a minute and we talked specifically about skills taxonomies. And she shared with me that they had like basically 2 full-time employees whose job it was to build a skills taxonomy in Excel and manage it manually by copy and pasting skills. And she was like, it's just not, scalable. It's just not maintainable. And so, yeah, with Bridge, like we've definitely kept that in mind. And there are a couple of ways that we've kind of helped streamline that whole process, Akash. So great questions. I'll start by saying, around the content specifically, one very common question we hear is, holy crap, we've got, 100 courses, 1,000 courses in our library. How do we tag every single one of those with all the relevant skills? Some of these are very long. We're never going to have the time to go through and, tag every single one with all the different skills that are relevant to it. And that's one thing that we really kept in mind when we were building out our engine in Bridge is so what you can now do in Bridge, whether it's an e-learning course, a scoring package, whether it's an instructor-led event, or even one of those curriculums that have been built out, you guys as administrators can come in and actually see the associated skills tab here of basically all the skills that have been associated with this. So we can, of course, go in manually and add those one at a time, which would take probably 12 years. But what we can also do is come in and say, hey, I want AI to go through and basically scrub all of our content and look and auto tag those courses with the relevant skills. So I can just say, hey, Bridge, I want you to go and look through that course and then automatically tag it. And you'll notice, yeah, it just automatically added a good handful of skills there. So really streamlining that process of tagging content effectively. What I'll also point out is, yeah, it's added just a handful here that it was very confident in. But what Bridge will do is also recommend some additional skills that are in my, like the way I kind of frame it is, hey, we weren't like 100% confident that this is relevant, but we're kind of just recommending them of like, hey, these might also be relevant to this course as well. So you as an admin can very quickly go, hey, yeah, safety assurance is also tied to that, data science, let's say. And as you start to add more skills, more will be recommended. So again, it's just kind of an evolving process of just really making this as refined as possible. So
And
again,
Mitch, if
oh,
if
gosh, go
uh,
ahead.
if the organization had maybe like a custom skills library or taxonomy, can they also, for any of these courses, tag custom skills?
Yeah, they absolutely can. Yep. So we can customize those and come in and type those if you've brought in a skills taxonomy. I'll also point out, like with Bridge off the shelf, like we've got a kind of behind the scenes skills taxonomy, which, gosh, I'm actually pretty sure you're a bigger expert on that than I am with Lightcast and all that. But we've got kind of a database of skills pre-populated in Bridge. But of course, you can come in at any time and add additional skills. Especially when you get into those more niche industries of like manufacturing, construction, whatever it may be, where you've got like skill specific to machinery or whatever it is, you can of course come in and add those additional skills as needed as well. But yeah, all great questions. Love that. But yeah, so that is kind of like the authoring side. One other area I was going to show, which is very quickly, I know we're kind of running short on time, is the administrative side. So kind of that skills taxonomy that goes on behind all of this. And what's great is Bridge is also going to pre-populate that with a lot of the data that's being brought into the system. I would say the vast majority of the organizations that we work with are integrating Bridge to their HRIS systems. So like their Paylocities, their Workdays, their ADPs, you name it. And so as that employee data is being passed into Bridge, Bridge is actually going to kind of pre-populate and say, hey, here's a list of all the different job titles that live in your organization. And if I actually click into those, we can actually start to see the skills that have been auto tagged to those job titles. And once again, I can come over and actually say, hey, yeah, there's some additional things that I want to add very quickly and easily. So again, we can build out that kind of like job title skill taxonomy behind the scenes. Additionally, I'll point out here is there also is a whole section dedicated to the individual skills. So yeah, if I want to go back to that Excel macros and see like, hey, show me all the different job titles that are working on this skill, all of the content that's tied to it or tagged to it, I can see that as well too. So we can see here, we've got that operations director, which is just myself. But if there's any other job titles, departments, I would be able to see those here. In addition, I can also come over here and see, hey, all of the courses that have been pre-tagged with that skill. And again, I can also come over here and add additional resources or trainings to that directly here from an administrative side. So again, really trying to just help make that process as seamless and painless as possible for you guys to populate this. And then just all you guys have to do is hopefully just refine from there going forward. But all
And
wonderful.
Mitch,
Yeah, oh
and
gosh.
Mitch, even after the organization kind of imports a skill taxonomy, maps it to roles, and after each one of these skills are even tagged to all the learning content that's available so that learners get the right recommendations, what's the rich insights that the business can get from all this activity? So if users are taking, courses or adding skills, how does the business kind of see the value, or what are some of the KPIs or reporting that's possible?
Yeah, I love it, Akash. So there's kind of two main areas that we can go to look at some of the reporting or the analytics behind all the skills development work that's going on in our business. One of the places I love to start is the skill mastery section here, which is just again big picture. What are those skills across our organization that people are actively interacting with, getting skills feedback surveys on, and we can see, hey, across the organization, what are we typically rated highly in, and what are those areas that we typically receive low ratings on. And I love that because then that's just for us in L&D a quick indicator of, hey, these are topics that we need to go out and either build new content on, purchase new content, but this is what people are struggling with specifically, or these specific skills here. But if you want to get a better understanding of like, hey, what content do we have to fill those specific gaps? I love our skills analytics section specifically. That's based in kind of like our reporting engine behind the scenes. Because this gets a little bit more in the weeds of not only like, hey, what are all the different skills that our company is working on? You can jump in here and see it, like line by line, what are all the different skills that people have identified or said they're wanting to work on? But I can also see specifically, hey, what are those content skill gaps that we might have? Like, what are skills that people have said, hey, this is something that I want to work on, I want to develop. And unfortunately, we just don't have content or resources for them. And so we can come in here and see, hey, communication is one that someone said, hey, this is something I want to develop. We currently have 0 courses tagged with communication. So an indicator for us, again, to go back out, find content and help, provide resources for that employee. But I also love that this section kind of shows you the profile completeness as well, just so you guys as administrators can even see like, hey, how many people in our org have actually gone through, filled out their career vision and identified skills they want to work on. So you guys can still, kind of manage and make sure people are being held accountable and really supporting them through that journey. But okay, Akash, I've been throwing a lot of stuff on the screen and talking a lot. So I'm going to pause there. That is like a quick look at kind of like Bridge today. What I thought, I know we've got about 15 minutes or so left. I think the next 5 minutes or so we should spend looking at kind of the future of kind of the skills development aspect of Bridge. And that can leave us about 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A. Does that sound all right with you?
That sounds like a plan. Maybe also
I love it.
share a quick case study
Yeah, well, of course.
of an organization that's really been successful implementing this.
Absolutely, yeah, and one of them that we shared here, which I know a lot of you will get the slide deck after the fact, but one great case study or basically example of a success story of this was a brand called AdWise out in Europe. They came to Bridge specifically for that need of like learning or basically building a skills development strategy and trying to get the training just to be that much more effective. And they immediately saw an increase in things like promotions, internal promotions increased by up to 10%. They saw just the overall completion of training skyrocketed up to 99%. But I absolutely love this red one here, which is kind of why I've highlighted it, which is like 30% more growth centered conversations. And that was kind of something I mentioned it kind of towards the start. But my biggest priority whenever working with L&D leaders is how do we free you guys up to spend more time in front of people and having like positive conversations rather than doing monotonous tasks in the LMS. Like that is not what you're here for. You are here to really motivate and help like drive that growth in the business. And so I love that we were able to help them increase that by up to 30%. Just think of like all the different, great conversations that took place because of that. And so absolutely love that. But yeah, again, like we'll share this over with you guys after the fact. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of share just like a real life success story before we kind of talked about, the future of skills here at Bridge. But Akash, I'll throw it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, so with all the features that Mitch was sharing right now around skills development, around skills analytics, some of the administrative AI features that we've built, what I like to talk about now is kind of what is our vision? Where do we see all of this going? Well, many people call it a talent marketplace. Some folks we've heard call it like a career marketplace. But our aspiration is that learners can go into Bridge and the system is just going to be so smart where it understands the individual's skills, what they've taken in terms of learning, what feedback they've gotten on their skills, and it starts to proactively recommend 5 different type of developmental opportunities. And so they kind of go to this page, and the first type of developmental opportunity that they can get recommended is, career paths. So if we want to go to the next slide, Mitch, this idea that the system not only will recommend like learning and training to them, but it will also say, hey, we've seen that you've been developing X amount of skills. Did you also know that based on your current role today, here are other paths that you might be able to take within your business or our business? And the quickly really allow the employee to say and understand, here's your gaps. If any of these paths look interesting to you, here are the skills you should really be focusing on, and then help the individual, right? So from an aspirational career perspective, what are the other developmental resources that can be possible to help that employee get there? So one aspect of this talent marketplace is definitely, going deep around career paths and helping people kind of move into the right roles they might be interested in. The second is internal mobility or job opportunities. So over time, as the system understands what careers people are interested in, what skills they're actively developing, what sorts of job opportunities are being unlocked where people internally can start looking at them before you think about recruiting externally. And then the third is mentorship. We believe that mentorship within an organization should be democratized. So anyone should be empowered to specify, maybe raise their hand, specific skills if they're interested in being a mentor for. And the system will look at, roles employees are interested in, skills that they've added to their development plan or their profile that they're interested in, and foster connections, show people within the organization that might be someone that they may want to have conversation with, and start mentorship opportunities organically. The fourth one, which has been very exciting, is we've gotten a lot of feedback that organizations support test driving new roles or having more opportunities to build skills through actual experiences. So how can you have maybe short-term projects that can be recommended to your learners where they can, they're not moving from their current role, but by participating in a particular project, they can understand if, some of the skills that they're interested in developing actually unlock, new careers for them within your organization. And then finally, which this part of our vision you kind of saw today during the demo, is how do you make sure that the content and training that you have already developed or that you have purchased as an organization is actually getting into the hands of the right learners based on what they're thinking about developing and learning. So how do you take learning and actually personalize it at scale based on skills? So these are, I would like to say, some of the future features of the Bridge kind of career and skills product that we're going to be actively developing on.
Love it. A lot of good stuff coming, Akash. Look at you guys go. Well, wonderful. Yeah, we tried to make sure there was a few minutes left over here towards the end, and I wasn't great at keeping track of the chat or Q&A. So, Akash, did you see any questions come through that we need to answer before we kind of wrap up?
I did see one.
Okay.
It sees, can LinkedIn Learning courses be accessed, Mitch, from within the Bridge environment?
Yeah, great question. Let me actually jump back to Bridge, and I can show you what that looks like. So I will say absolutely. So LinkedIn Learning is one of the more common content partners that we work with. We actually do have native integrations set up with a good handful of those, with LinkedIn Learning being one of them. So right here under the integration section of Bridge, there's actually an option, yeah, where you can enable that connection with LinkedIn Learning and have all that content be pushed in. So you're really creating that one-stop shop for all things learning and development. So yeah, LinkedIn Learning, same goes with brands like Open Sesame, and I know we're working on others with Udemy and Coursera and other great brands. So yeah, many more to come, but absolutely with LinkedIn Learning. Yeah, great question.
And Mitch, we also had another one, does Bridge support both online and in-person training?
Yeah, we absolutely do. That's one of the biggest questions we get asked when talking about like, yeah, on the job, hands-on training. Yeah, so absolutely. One of the great things about Bridge is we do have a live training option. So this can be both, virtually through like a Zoom, GoToMeeting, whatever, but it can also be like on a job site, hands-on training as well too. So multiple ways you can build out that module. And then, yeah, again, you can kind of bring all of those into those larger development plans, the journeys that we described earlier. So if you've got a very, robust kind of plan you want to walk them through, that's a mixture of both e-learning and hands-on. You can absolutely do that in Bridge. One other thing I'll point out too is we also have the checkpoint functionality in Bridge, which honestly we barely even talked about today. And that is basically an evidence-based learning module. So if you want your employees to demonstrate a skill of, hey, show me how to use that excavator on a job site, or show me, how to drive your truck and you have your CDL or whatever it is, you can actually require learners to take a picture, take a video, upload a document, whatever it is, into that checkpoint to kind of serve as that evidence of, hey, yeah, I've done X, Y, and Z, Akash, I know how to do this. You can let me out on a job site. So many ways to interact with those learners. So it's not just all e-learning, but it's very hands-on and interactive as well. But great questions.
Yeah, and then Mitch, also, can managers see their team's kind of training progress in Bridge?
They absolutely can. Yeah. So again, handful of places they can go to do that. So as a manager, I can come in and actually look at individualized like profiles of, hey, what is Dylan working on? What's his progress? What I'll also point out is our like analytic engine behind the scenes is all set up and managed around your company hierarchy. So managers, people leaders can actually come in and see like specifically how their team is performing. I'm going to update this just so we have a little bit more data to look at here. But yeah, if I'm a manager of one specific team and I come in here, I will only see data specific to my team and my workforce. And I can see, hey, what are they overdue on? What are they in progress on? What have they completed? So I can get that full visibility over how my team is performing. And then, yeah, as you move up kind of the role and permission food chain, we want to call it, and you move to like that administrative view, that's when you get the visibility that I have here of, hey, I can look at different departments. I can look at how they're, compare and contrasting those. You can also even filter by individual course titles. So, hey, I want to see across our organization how we're doing on a one specific training. You can, of course, filter by that and get very specific dashboards for those things. But I
And
love
then I see one more, and maybe I'll tackle this one. It's what role does AI kind of play in personalizing learning inside Bridge? I think there's a couple things that we're doing that Mitch shared earlier in the demo around AI. One is we're making sure that for each individual's job title, there's the AI is actually looking at kind of the labor market data for your company and your industry and kind of recommending skills based on that. Now, you are able to personalize that. But at the second point is we're looking at your entire content library, right? And the AI is kind of scanning, your course title and description to make sure that it's being appropriately tagged with the right skills. Because having both recommendations for skills on your job role and your courses is what actually ends up being recommended to your users when they go to the learning library and get content. So AI is
Love it.
kind of working in two directions. One, they're looking at a user's job role and their job title. And then second, making sure your course catalog is actually tagged with the right skills.
Wonderful. Well, before we kind of wrap up and throw it back to Liz, I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you for joining. Appreciate all the great questions as well too. Akash and I really enjoy just having these conversations. So appreciate the input, the feedback, all that great stuff. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Great chatting with you all. And Liz, we'll hand it back over to you because I know you've got some housewarming thing, or not housewarming. What's the term? Housekeeping? That's the word I'm looking for. Too
I
much
mean,
talking. You can see it. You
both.
need a
I
nap.
mean, we can warm a house. We can totally do that right now.
There you go.
But no, this was
Love it.
fantastic, gentlemen. This was a great questions, great conversation in the chat. So you definitely should be getting some pokes after this. So this was fantastic. Thank you so much. So I'll steal the screen back and show you some more up and coming webinars we have. So for all of our events, always you can register these and watch past ones now at trainingindustry.com. And all of our webinars are pre-qualified for a credit hour by HRCI, SHRM, ISPI, and CPTM. You will see my email in a few more slides. I'll point it out, but you can just shoot an email to me and I will send you those codes. But additionally, we have some really good events coming up still in February and up and coming in March. So CBTM, it is our certified professional and training management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. So you can find more information at trainingindustry.com/training. And additionally, I would love to meet you all here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2025 Training Industry Conference and Expo. So TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address your most pressing learning challenges. So we do have an early bird savings all the way till March, so totally check it out. And lastly, that evaluation survey should have popped open another tab in your browser, and we would appreciate hearing your feedback from today's session. Like I said, you can see my email there, so just quickly type it and I will send you those codes. But again, I want to thank you so much to our amazing speakers, Mitchell and Akash, and of course, our amazing sponsor, Bridge. But lastly, I do thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope to see you next time. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend, everybody.